Looking to connect to other Overwatch players just like you? Be in the know with the latest news around the game and the league? You're in the right place. Welcome to Overwatch Recall, connecting you with Overwatch podcasts. With your host, Glen Totemlydrunk Smiddy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Overwatch Recall, connecting you with Overwatch podcasters and content creators. I am your host, Glen, Totemlydrunk Smiddy, and tonight I am sitting down with Austin Hanlin, who is one of the writers on Overwatch Score. Austin, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to sit down and talking a little bit about the work that you produce for Overwatch Score. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, it's no problem, man. You know, there's not much going on down in the off season, so there's not much on that schedule right now.
Nope, and probably not for roughly a month at this point, because we still don't have any details in regards to preseason. But just looking at the season 1 window, we should be expecting to hear something about that fairly soon.
Oh, here's hoping. Here's hoping.
So with that being said, normally, to kick things off, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the creators themselves, where they basically, got started in regards to gaming, whether or not Overwatch has been their first Blizzard title, or if you're, a Blizzard fanboy at heart. So, Austin, when did you first initially start gaming, and kind of, just walk me through your Blizzard history?
Well, I mean, I started playing video games, as most kids, I guess, at my age, with Minecraft and all that, and then... So I was playing on horrible laptops or at school, just playing around with friends. And of course, we slowly started playing more games and all that. And I mostly played single player stuff. I wasn't really big on multiplayer. Most of my friends played League of Legends, which it sometimes got way too toxic for me. So I kind of shied away from that scene. So I remember when Overwatch kind of came out, when it was announced, all my friends, we were just playing it around that time. I think it was kind of close to when school was coming out for that semester. So we were all playing it, but it was my first real Blizzard game. I played Hearthstone before that. That was about it, but it was the first real Blizzard game that I kind of invested a lot of time into.
That's awesome. So you're one of the few instances where you actually started with Overwatch. That's absolutely great.
It just comes with the age, I guess. I mean, so many of the other creators and everyone on the scene is just they've been, just alive for a lot longer than me. They've been playing games a lot longer than me, and they've been around since Blizzard started. And Overwatch, I think, it came out at the right time.
Fantastic. So with that being said, obviously Overwatch Score primary focus is on esports. Prior to Overwatch, did you follow any other esports scenes out there, or did you kind of start with Overwatch there as well?
Well, I mean, before that, my friends, of course, followed League of Legends esports. I would kind of just tag along. I'd pick the team I'd want to win, and I'd watch it sometimes with them. Same with CS:GO. And then I remember it was World Cup last year that I really watched the whole thing, because I'm from the UK originally. I was really hoping for Team UK to win. Didn't happen last year. It was pretty bad, if I remember right. And I just kept watching that. I said, well, that was really good. I don't really follow esports. And then bam, Overwatch League came out right after that. And I was just well, that's the next thing to go to. So it was again, yeah, Overwatch really was the first Blizzard game. It was the first esport.
It's really amazing, how many esports fans have happened just due to Overwatch, because you have a lot of people that, just really didn't follow any other game or any other big names out there, and you kind of have Overwatch League coming into the scene, kind of following more of a traditional sports league, and now everything's location based, and we'll talk about this in just a little while, but we're gonna have the introduction of traveling on the road for road games with Overwatch League, and it's really starting to kind of come into its own. And that I know that announcement on Watchpoint kind of blindsided a lot of people. They're like, wait, they're already doing this? So I can only imagine how much more hype that's going to bring to the Overwatch League going into this upcoming season for 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say this was given to me on the down low off the books. That I was told from insiders in the scene it was meant to be 2020 that the road games were meant to start. There was not meant to be like anything happening kind of this year. I didn't expect it at all. I don't think they expected it either. But all of a sudden, just Watchpoint was like, we're gonna have road games. Now, I think that every game's course not gonna be a road game, but I was expecting it. I've been told I was like 2020 is gonna be the year. Nothing's gonna happen 2019. Don't even worry about it. And I was like, it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and a lot of that too just kind of has to do with the fact that a lot of these teams out there were still trying to find a place to actually play. Like, not everyone had like an arena set or like a theater set to play in, and that's why we kept hearing that 2020, season 3, and that is just like it just hit us all of a sudden. Like, we've heard like bits and pieces of like an Arlington arena opening for esports. I think the Valiant had something lined up.
They have they're playing in the Microsoft Theater.
Right, but like there were like really long droughts where we just didn't hear anything about that. So
no, it just really it kind of just came out of nowhere because I was told I was like expecting it. I think everyone was that it's like if we got road games now, then of course people who don't have the pleasure of going to the arena to interview people all the time, now they get the chance to see them, and we get to really see, I guess, the community that comes around the teams show themselves. And you only really saw that when the teams would visit those places in the first place. So I think it's really going to start developing the scene a lot more, and we'll see. I guess it will really be the testing ground to see if a city-based esports like league can really stand up.
It's really just a case of this point of like dipping your toes in the water. Maybe they could test some of the markets that they haven't quite hit, or we'll talk more about in detail about some other things that they might be able to do. Let's learn a little bit about Overwatch Score. So Overwatch Score, main focus is on competitive Overwatch, whether it is the Overwatch League or Path to Pro, it's. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You guys have a pretty big write-in staff. I know one of my good friends, Thornrain, is also on the write-in staff for you guys, who does a Path to Pro podcast, Blackwatch Report. Is there any aspect or certain tier that you typically focus on when it comes to your writing?
So with my writing, I'm going to be honest, I kind of learned early on that I did not really enjoy sitting at my house typing up saying, this is what's going to happen. Oh, this team's going to get ahead. I really when I went to the arena for the first time and I got the interview with the people and the players, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to get to the meat of it. I want to see what the players are thinking. I want to hear what they're saying. I want to know what they're going to do when game day comes. And it really kind of boiled down to I want to be at the arena every weekend, and I want to see the action, and I want to immediately get the story on it.
So you were more boots on the ground, essentially, is what you're telling me.
One of my first, I think one of my first writing things is that when I first joined Overwatch Score, they were immediately like, okay, we got an interview with Hydration and Big Goose. We need someone to do it. Austin, you're on the Pacific Standard Time. You get on it. And I was immediately just thrown right in. I was interviewing 2 players just right off the bat. I was like, man, I thought I had to work a bit more for this, but there you go.
Just falls on your lap at that point.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So was there a certain moment initially that really sparked your interest in writing, pre-Overwatch League, or did it just kind of come with the time, since everything kind of just seemed to hit you at once when it comes to Overwatch?
So with Overwatch Esports, I remember I was looking at it and I'd been at that point in my life, it was I was about to be done with high school. I was kind of in I would say a little rough time. Things weren't going too great, and I found Overwatch League, and immediately I attached to it. I was like, this is something I want to get into. I want to get involved in Overwatch Esports any way I can. And I remember I'd gone to the arena once before this with my girlfriend, right at the start, opening weekend, and I was blown away. And I kept telling my dad about it because I share everything with him. And he said, well, I want to see it. I want to know what it's like. And he's been my dad's done management for bands and all that his whole life, and that's kind of what I wanted to do in esports. It just seems so similar. I took him there, and he was really blown away with it. But what I think really set me on the path to get involved was that I was sitting in the front section. I got there. I'm a Spitfire fan. I had the sign. I had my jersey on, and I see Nate Nanzer just walking on the floor. I think he's showing these some investors. They were right in the front, and no other person's reacting and being there. And I go, and he start walking by. I lean back and say, "Hey, man, thanks for this." And I put my hand up. He smacks my hand and he says, "No problem, man," and walks off. And I look at my dad and I'm just like, oh my God, that was the commissioner of the Overwatch League. And it gets even crazier because later that night, because this was stage 1, London Spitfire hadn't played Seoul yet. So this was like dynasties, like they have to stand up. They have to, like, New York kind of got them. Are they going to be like the second tier team if London can't beat them? And I go, well, and I look, like Jack is sitting like right behind me. And I go up there and I was like, hey, I just really wanted to say, like, thanks for putting the team together. And I want to know how I can get involved with esports more. And he said, okay, take my card. And I get his card. I'm like, oh my God, can I get a picture? And I'm shaking. I can't take the photo right. So he has to take it. And I go back and I get his card. And I was like, well, here's my way in. Didn't really work out. I played kind of tag with his secretary for a bit. But in that time, I was thinking I have to get involved somehow. I have to get more of this. And Overwatch Score was out there, and he said, "Hey, we're always looking for more writers, more volunteers." I just wrote about how blown away I was by stage 1, and I was in. So it was a really long story chain of events that kind of it was never necessarily I enjoyed writing. It was more so I need to get involved, and this is the way in.
Yeah, so that was essentially like getting your foot in the door at that point. But like that's awesome that like so early on, like you got to experience, such like monumental moments with some pretty big figureheads, both on kind of like your home team essentially, and just seeing Nate Nanzer there.
It was that was like I was sitting in the back, no one else was reacting, and I'm just walking around. I was just awestruck. It was really just an incredible moment.
So with that being said, when did you first like officially get started with Overwatch Score? So I'm assuming it would be around that, stage 1 time when you really started going to the events.
It was right after I put in that my first writing piece, kind of the test one, right at the end of stage 1, because I said, well, what the heck, why not? And they got back to me about a week later. So it really began break stage 1, stage 2 was when I was really in on Overwatch Score, when I was really like involved in like going to events and writing up interviews and all that. So it was definitely just end of stage 1, stage 2 was when it all began.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So like I know like you don't have like the longest track record in regards to overall length, but you covered a lot within the first season. Are there any sort of articles or pieces that you've worked on that you think are your favorite, or maybe the ones that you were most proud of that might have gained like the most traction for you as a writer?
So the first one that really like said, "Oh my gosh, people are reading it," was when I believe Brandon he's in the scene and all that. I don't know if everyone knows him. The Seagull guy.
Yeah, Seagull number guy. 1 fan. Yeah, he does a lot of the this week.
So what happened was that I couldn't watch the league that day. I was at work, and he went in the Discord because that's when he still wrote for Overwatch Score, and he said, "Hey, I think it was I'm totally blanking on the caster who said it, but they said they just mentioned your article. They were talking about how you just talked to Raucus about Tracers and Houston Outlaws, and they just talked about it on the scene. They tweeted him and said, 'Oh, thanks for reading our article, so and so.'" And I was like, "Damn!" So at that point, I knew that there are eyes on my writing and there are eyes on Overwatch Score. And I don't think I've got that with any other piece until really close now for the World Cup. Because most of my interviews at that point had been like, how you feel about the rest of the stage, how are you guys going to keep playing, is the new meta meaning anything? And I went to Overwatch World Cup and I said, well, most of those questions aren't really going to last until the actual World Cup finals, and I can't ask most of those. So I went and I spoke to Liku, and it was really an eye-opening moment when I asked him about what should people see when they think of SA, and how he was so passionate about speaking about how people should follow the scene and what they should watch out for. And it really like opened my eyes to just contenders in general and what it meant for these players. And that was why, I don't know if it was one of my most popular articles. It was definitely one that is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, and that South American scene is one that is constantly growing and evolving, much like the Australian scene as well. And speaking of recent events, like we now know that Boston has approached not one but 2 different South American players, both with their academy team as well as Boston Uprising. So it just comes to show, like, these regions that maybe aren't quite getting the same amount of exposure have just so much untapped potential when it comes to the players playing there. You have Brazil Gaming House, who basically ran shot through that entire region, And they had some disagreements with their org. The org and the roster kind of split ways, but the players still have that contender slot, and here they are competing as the base tryhards, and we're 3 weeks in right now at this point in contenders SA, and they have still yet to drop a map. So regardless of what the situation is with the team or what players are moving up in regards to playing in North America, that they are still hands down the team to beat in that region. And with these opportunities kind of coming up for them, I can only imagine that that's going to mean not only good things for South America here in the future, but it also opens the door for a lot of other regions that don't quite have that representation in the Overwatch League outside of maybe coaches, because even with Australia too, it's kind of like a similar case, because they basically have the Sydney Drop Bears coach got moved up, as well as Color Hex, which also happens to be with Boston as well. So I thought it was interesting, they're all focused within one team, which is a little peculiar, given some of the internal struggles that team may had, but I'm just glad to see the movement coming up just kind of across the globe at this point.
Mm-hmm. It's especially for South America with base tryhards, I was really blown away by that. But I was I'm thinking in my head this is their shot. If base tryhards, an organization that is literally only done by the players, it's a runaway story. It's not by the fact that they're underdogs, but the fact that they've just gone unnoticed for so long, and that these guys have been able to all come together and just say, we're base tryhards, we're the best in South America, notice us. And they're all still free agents. Every single one of them are you can hire me for Overwatch League at any time. And they want to break out of SA, and they want to come on the world stage, and they want South America to be noticed in the Overwatch scene.
And it doesn't matter right now if you're Klaus, who's playing with essentially 230 ping, he's still going to be popping off for Uprising Academy.
I know, yeah. It's insane. Especially remember Liko mentioned that he's the big thing for him was that people were always telling him, man, you're doing this good on almost 200 ping. Imagine if you were just playing in an arena. The organization and the logistics for South America are just not there as they are in Korea and North America and all that for contenders, which is a real shame. And I think that more people just need to keep their eyes on it, because it's where I think a lot more talent's going to come from. And if it isn't, then I think that's a real shame, because a lot of these organizations are missing out on some real players who've got more experience under their belt than some people they're just grabbing off the top 500 ladder. There's so many players in the South American scene who should, I think, be in the Overwatch League, who are just being taken in by people who stream more in North America and Korea.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it really boils down to not only the environment that they're playing in, but also a little bit of the lack of exposure, because, they're not always kind of at the forefront of the competitive scene, which is a real shame. But bringing it back, you mentioned, you are more, hands-on when it comes to being at the events, and something that you did within this past year is you went to a lot of the Be Valiant events, because you are local to that area. So What events in particular did you actually attend for the Be Valiant stuff?
I attended every event but the campus party, because I had prom that day, okay? And and then I think back on it, maybe I should have gone. But it definitely I have been to every single one, besides the most recent one where they did the viewing party and the on-campus party in the middle of the whole Be Valiant campaign.
So how would you say those sort of events that are kind of held during the off season or off hours compare to actually being at the arena? Is it a different vibe?
So it was when it's weird. It was really weird when I went to the first one at the esports arena in Santa Ana. That was more so it was really kind of, I'd say B tier of anything. It felt like I was going and there was some local band performing, and there was just not the hype around it, and there was a good turnout of fans, and it kind of showed me that there is really a community building just around city location. And then I think it was different than the arena, because the next one I went to was the Be Valiant art thing, where it was at the art gallery, and I was in the middle of there, and I was like, man, here's all the players, no Winston's here. and like all the LA Valley staff, and there's a few artists and fans mixed in, and we're all standing around looking at fan art that people have made over the past few months for the team going on auction. And I was like, man, if I was involved in any other type of esports, I doubt this could ever happen. And it was so odd to just be like walking around. It's like, man, this is the local community at work right here, and this is nothing that I ever thought esports could be. And that really got me and said, man, I guess Valiant is just so on top of being involved with the community and like just building it up from the ground up. And that all kind of showed itself at the first California Cup, which was nothing compared to like the first time that the esports arena in Santa Ana. Everyone there was there for LA Valiant. It was sold out. I believe they sold out just the night beforehand. They sold out the VIP tickets in like a week, if I remember correctly. So the diehard fans were there from the start, and then it just all kind of trickled in. And then they had the fair outside and the games inside. And of course, that esports people and gamers, you're not really going to see them walking around the middle of the street when people are playing the game they want to watch inside all the time. But it was it kind of just showed that that Overwatch League can work on a really local level. That if you give an organization a city, the people there are they're even if they're maybe not huge in esports, or maybe they're more on they're really big for esports, but they never pick an organization because they don't feel that connection, then those people are going to come. And those people are going to show up, and those people are going to be active in the community. And that means a lot for when these teams start going on the road and playing at the arenas, because they already have those ticket sales basically punched in. They know people are going to show up.
I will say, some of the teams have done a better job at kind of creating that localization, community, as opposed to some other teams. But, now that we know that we're going to have road games, it's definitely going to, I'm not going to say it's going to pressure a lot of teams to really start to branch out a little bit more, but it's definitely going to entice them to really start to build that connection between, the teams and, their local fan bases. Because we've seen a lot of other off-season type events. We had the Gilded Gala with the London Spitfire and the Houston Outlaws. And, I'll be honest, I didn't actually watch both the California Cup and the Gilded Gala live. But from what I caught, just the overall production value between the two was night and day. The California Cup, I thought was awesome. I love the commentary that they had on hand for the event, which has kind of expanded into some other venues that we didn't quite expect during the off season, like Monte Cristo's wedding, which was hilarious. But the Gilded Gala kind of felt a little bit flat to me, and you could kind of tell that even with some of the crowd that was there. Just because it wasn't, I'm not gonna say it wasn't as personal, just because it wasn't a battle for California, but it was definitely a total different feeling between the two.
I have to say that the production value for the LA Valiant one was way up, but when you're at the esports arena, it was where I was sitting, it felt so kind of shoddy because the VIP guys were at the top, but the problem was that the way the seats were, if you were looking down from certain areas, you just couldn't see the screen on it. So I definitely think the guys the regular fans, everyone kind of migrated down the front. So the energy just got more and more intense as everyone just kind of came down. And it was really, I could not stay for the whole thing, sadly. I'll be honest, I could not stay for the whole thing, sadly. But it was definitely night and day compared to the gala, and then compared to any event before it, that it was just so much activity, so many fans from both teams, mind you. LA Valiant were the dominant, but there was a small pocket of Shock fans there as well. And it really just showed how, if anything, the Valiant community is probably the most involved and biggest of any teams, but how big the other teams can be with their community.
It kind of reminds me of, okay, so I'm from Chicago, and when it comes to Chicago sports, something that we tend to do, especially with baseball, is, Milwaukee's not that far from us. And there are situations where, a group of us will drive up to Milwaukee, but Milwaukee is so close to Chicago where there are times where it feels like Wrigley Field North. It's like our home stadium away from home. It's still local, but it's not quite the same theme. But there's moments where you can as a Cubs fan, we can actually take over that stadium. So I'm really curious to see whether or not there's ever going to be an instance within the Overwatch League where something like that can happen between, either one of the Texas teams or even in California between the three teams that are there.
Yeah, I definitely feel that maybe it wasn't in my mind, the greatest idea to have so many in the same state. But at the same time, it makes like the impact on cities so much more important. Now, granted, I don't follow a lot of regular sports. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but at the same time, that when you see those teams, they always usually have in their areas at least one dominant team from the city or one dominant team from the state, kind of deal. And as I'm not too involved with regular sports, I don't know how that will go for the Overwatch League. But if the Valiant is any benchmark to go off of, I think it's just going to get better from there.
So what does it mean to you to be Valiant? Because I know that's like been one of their major focuses in regards to labeling these events.
I think at the end of the day, granted, while you can take the message, a lot of people take it like different ways. If you're looking in the stance of like, what does Be Valiant mean for the team to the community? Be Valiant means like show up, show everyone else that we're the kings of LA, show everyone else that we're the top team to mess with, that if you come to our arena, no one's going to be able to take us down no matter what. No one's going to be able to break our spirit. And it means like, if anything, in the esports crowd to just like be there and be involved, as opposed to always kind of, if you're supporting using an organization, like how much involvement do those orgs really have compared to now, like with the Overwatch League with the city, you know, everyone's so used in esports to just like maybe showing up if the arena's in their town. Not many people will travel out for it. But with like Overwatch League, like you had guys coming all the way from like driving from Florida just to the arena, or coming all the way from like London and like all these different places. And it really Be Valiant in the end, I think, means that like participate, stand up, and show everybody else what it means to love your team.
Yeah, and there were definitely like some diehard fans that were there pretty much every single day. Like every time you would tune in to the Overwatch League stream, you would see certain people there. You had your diehard fans, whether it was the Shock, Spitfire, the Outlaws. In regards to like teams that weren't based in California, probably had the biggest presence overall. Like at least in the arena, and it's just it's crazy to really think about. Like even though like we're so really early on in the Overwatch League, that the amount of fans that actually travel to go to the arena that aren't from California or from the West Coast, like it's just really surreal because it sees just how much potential there is, and I can only imagine where things are going to go once we actually start to play more games outside of the LA area. But like just being local. Definitely kind of like heighten the overall experience in regards to what would be a rival game between the Gladiators and the Valiant, because
those always sell out. Anyway. Those are a real joy to watch and like a joy to be there, honestly. Go on, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, it didn't matter, like, when they were playing, like, the environment for the Battle of LA, like, always felt like a playoff game. Like, regardless of how the teams were doing, like, there was always, like, this palpable, like, energy within the arena that you could just hear, just even in the broadcast. Even if you weren't there, like, you could tell, like, how serious the two sides were between them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I know I've really hyped it up. But because I've gone to the arena quite a few times, not every day, but I've been there quite a few times, especially like, they'll never show you on camera, but especially on weekdays, if it's the middle of the stage, there will only ever be enough people to kind of fill the front. Now that's not like, if you go now, that's in comparison to weekends and stage playoffs where it's sold out. It's full. And it kind of shows that when I would go, because I've been there so often, when I'll go on the weekdays, I see the same people there all the time. Like, even regardless of their team is playing, some people will show up to the Overwatch League and they'll always be there. Or if especially their team's playing that day, they'll be there. Like, it's kind of weird. I don't really like know these people. I've never said hi to them or anything like that, but I can spot them in the crowd because I've just seen them there so often. Especially for LA Valiant fans when they're playing, because they can just like, some of them could just take like a 10-minute drive and they're at the arena. And they got the season pass, so they bought the ticket for that day because they had nothing else to do that night. And it's just like, it really proves that like city-based ones, and if you're not playing all the time in different arenas, all that, like you're going around, if you're talking about like League of Legends finals or like majors in CSGO, that it just kind of happens to end up in this city. It really proves that people will consistently show up to these, and it shows the community can be built around just having a local team.
We are, at this point in, that kind of like long drought of the off season. We're drawn closer and closer to the preseason, when it is announced anyway. But this past week we did have the Watchpoint season preview for this 2019 season, which confirmed, some of the format changes that we're going to see, and also made a couple of announcements, both when it comes to traveling, as well as, maybe some new sign-ins that weren't actually known at the time. So they did confirm that we are shifting from a 40-game schedule to a 28-game schedule. And really, that's not that big of a surprise. We are going from 12 teams to now having 20 teams for Season 2. So how do you feel like the change of the schedule is going to affect not only like the overall quality of the games that are being played, but also like the players' mental health state? Because there were quite a few instances in Season 1 where players were either getting burnt out, or they were homesick, or, they just felt like they were putting in, like, too many practice hours, things like that. Do you expect, like, an overall increase of quality when it comes to the games that are being played?
No, this is something that, like, it came to my attention, really, when in the middle of the season where you have guys saying, like, well, pro athletes do this all the time. You have to step up to this level. You got to participate in this. And then there's somebody who was like, well, come on, guys. They play video games. They're not really used to doing all that. And I don't really know where to stand in that. I feel like there has to be some sort of middle ground. But I think if seeing as we're like going down the hours, how people are playing less, I think that the quality of the games, of course, are going to increase. But at the same time, when you have like games playing all the time, especially with Boston's amazing run, I think part of that had to do with just how much they were playing. That like every game they were winning, that it was just like one on top of the other, kind of just like boosted their confidence, made them so much more eager to play. Like every game, they were like, this is our game. And especially like, I think the most brazen examples of that come from teams like Dallas Fuel, like famously. We have, I believe it was Effect, right? Who just like, he kept going home, he kept traveling back, where it's that if you keep losing, that's never going to do good for any team's psyche, especially if you're hyped up like that. And I think for Season 2, I think that will vary depending on just the usual factors and then how much practice time is in, because now with all this more time, there is more time for practice. There's always more time for practice, really. And I think that player burnout is probably going to go down, but you can't really know until it happens. And especially with the road games, you don't know how that's going to affect them, because when you see people playing in majors or like world championships, they're usually there for like a bit beforehand and a bit after. But with road games, there could be, like Dallas Fuel could be playing in like in Washington, and then like 3 days later they could be back in LA. Granted, I don't know if the Nate Nanzer and all that, they have plans for that. Maybe they'll only have them play once a week if they do road games. But that is a real possibility, and it is in regular sports.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how exactly they implement that. Maybe like it's a situation where maybe if you're one of those teams that's only playing once that week, then that they would kind of like cherry pick from those teams. But like we also have like kind of the introduction of what would be a bye week in traditional sports, where a team might not even play at all. So they'll have like an entire week of either rest or just more time to actually prepare for their next series. But you're going to be playing anywhere from like 0 times to 2 times a week, and it's really going to boil down to like I think it's going to put like more I'm not going to say pressure on the coaches, but it's really going to differentiate the good coaching staffs as opposed to maybe some of the coaching staffs that have a little bit more catching up to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I'm not the kind of person you'd ask like, you analyze the players and all that. I can't speak on that level, and I've never had the pleasure of actually interviewing a coach and seeing their mentality. But I can say kind of from like the management side, I try and do that on the side. I get involved with like stuff Jane does with his like small tournaments, and I honestly, I can't really give an answer of any confidence on this. It's something that is really just going to develop over the season, and we're going to have to see what Season 2 has in store. And if Season 2 becomes the benchmark for every other season, then I think we're going to get some solid answers as this plays out.
It's really, honestly, probably going to be something that affects everyone differently, too. Like, you're going to have people that are going to be able to better manage their time when it comes to, like, these rest periods. And then, there's going to be other situations where it could just be complete chaos for some people. So, it's definitely going to be something to kind of, like, follow behind the scenes. But With this new season, we do know that we are shying away from the Wednesday through Saturday schedule, and we'll now be playing games started on Thursday, going through the weekend, through Sunday. And something that they did is they kind of shifted the start times for the weekend, which would be the Saturday and Sunday games, to start a little bit earlier. Because one of like the biggest complaints when it came to Season 1 was the schedule and how that kind of impacted like overseas viewership, because there were a lot of times where like fans in Europe just couldn't watch any of the games because it was really early in the morning. Like kind of like how it is right, like what I'm dealing with Contenders Korea, or just Contenders Pacific, where games are starting at like 3 o'clock in the morning. No one is going to stay up to watch that, especially when I have to, work early mornings. So it's more, they're trying to find like that sweet spot when it comes to the schedule where, when it comes to these other regions or teams that are in, different areas of the world, like London, like Seoul, like the 4 Chinese teams that we have now, like they're trying to find a schedule where they could put their games in a time slot that will actually work for them. And it's a smart move, but at the end of the day, like, because it is going to be international, like, I don't feel like there's a spot that is going to be perfect for everyone. It's just the nature of time zones. Like, how do they work? Like, you're not going to have a time that's going to work in both LA and then also Europe. Like, there's really few times in between that kind of works on both ends. But do you feel like the shift in the earlier start times is going to have some pretty positive impact when it comes to viewership kind of like across the board? Or is this only going to kind of affect, what's happening over in, the UK or, over in Asia when it comes to the Chinese market?
Well, if you're looking at it, I remember I saw on like Reddit, like, competitive Overwatch, there's some graphs. It's like, well, of course we start the season, like stage 1, incredibly strong start. There was like 400,000 viewers, and it kind of came down to an average of 100K, like for just over the whole thing. Like that was the average. And from what I had heard and from what I had seen, that was what people were expecting, and a bit more, honestly. So I think if you can cater to more time zones overall, then I think the viewership is just going to keep climbing. And hopefully with more teams, that viewership will also keep climbing. And at this point, I don't see it drastically going down. I don't see it anything like major changes or anything to worry about like that. I can't say, though, that, it's going to be the top thing on Twitch every time. There's going to be thousands and thousands of more views. I think stage 1, again, is going to be the most watched. Of course it is, at least. But it's really then from how many new people you can retain who already aren't watching Overwatch League, who now just have their own team to support. Can adding more teams and making the time zones better actually bring in more people who wouldn't originally be all too into Overwatch esports, give it a chance.
Yeah, maybe with like the less games played overall too, like that'll not only for the players but also the viewers. Like it's not gonna be a situation where like they're like gonna be like, oh man, there's gonna be 40 games of this, where I know plenty of people that either 1, watch every game, 2, kind of like cherry pick and just follow a team or maybe a couple of teams. Mm-hmm. But like it's one of those situations where you're not like only tuning in like once or twice, like, so it's really a matter of trying to like captivate more of that casual audience, to the point where we're trying to branch out more, and hopefully with the expansion, like the Chinese viewership is going to be kind of skyrocketed, because everyone kind of followed the Shanghai Dragons in season 1, and now you have 3 new, you have 3 new expansion teams. You have the Dragons actually playing the Spark, like on the open night, to like close it out, to see who's gonna get the first Chinese Overwatch League win, which is gonna be a very big story to watch. But I want to see, like, over time, if we're going to see a similar thing where day 1, like, there's very hype viewership, and then it's gonna drastically kind of go down over time, and some of it too has to be said about like just the way that the playoff format worked in season 1, because we are seeing a shift in that as well, especially when it comes to the end of the season playoffs, where now we have essentially the 7th through 12th place teams that aren't officially out of the picture, because there's gonna be like another way for them to actually get through to the end of season playoffs, which is going to bring even more involvement towards the later end of the season. So that's definitely going to be a huge thing to watch as well. But we mentioned road games, and there's a couple of different ways that they can do this. So we already mentioned like how both of us were blindsided by this, as was really like everyone. Like no one thought that this was going to happen, because when it came to season 1, everything was based in Los Angeles at the Blizzard Arena. We didn't start to see a road game until the first finals, which was obviously held in New York. Go figure. Even though that team didn't play, that's besides the point. But like, how would you actually go about doing the road games for this season? Would you focus on like maybe rivalries that are already built? Like, for example, obviously the battle for Los Angeles is going to be at the top of that list. You have Dallas, Houston. You have New York, Philadelphia. Now you even have like some of the Chinese cities that are really close to one another. You have the EU rivalry that could build between Paris and London, now that there's a little bit more representation there. Would you focus on that, or would you focus in a different avenue to kind of go about doing that?
Well, I'm no expert on this, so don't quote. Well, I guess quote me on this, but I have to say that you probably want to focus more with road games. You want to focus, I'd say, first of all, on teams that have built their communities. You want to focus on teams like Houston Outlaws and all that, when they've gone back to Texas and they know they can get the ticket sales. And I think you'd start in the United States. You'd go across for those teams. You'd see how well the teams are building their communities business-wise, by how many ticket sales you get, how many people are watching. And then you'd hit it internationally. Because I think only right now, I don't know anything about like any other teams about where they've got the arenas, but I know for a fact there are several teams in the US who have stadiums figured out and where they're going to be playing regularly. So definitely you hit those spots first, and then by then you see how developed all the other communities are, and you go off that. Now, that's not to say maybe Blizzard has it all figured out in their head. They know exactly where and when and all that, but that would be, if I was in charge of it, that would be how I'd do it. And that seems the most logical from what I know and from what I've experienced.
So basically you would be targeting places that already kind of have that infrastructure in place.
Mm-hmm. It is really the most logical thing. Why go to a place that's never had an Overwatch League game, that you don't know how involved the community is, when you can play it safe and you can go to Houston, you can go to, like, I don't know, Florida. I know they've been back there once. I think they've been back there at least. Maybe they haven't. You can go you can play more around California, and then you can hit up like more so East Coast and all that. And you just really see, I think the one before it is really going to impact the one after it, if they're doing it like kind of way more special event, like, as opposed to just, this is going to be the regular thing, like this road game of this stage is going to be here. And then next stage, maybe there'll be 2 to 3 road games, and those will be here, here, and here. And then maybe stage 3, there's going to be like 10 road games here, 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 and here. And then maybe stage 4, we're going international now. We're hitting up all these places that have never had an Overwatch League game, but now we're confident that the community is involved enough to finally give it to them,
Yeah, the really like the only other option that I could see them doing is maybe they do treat it where maybe like this might only be like for the stage playoffs, where they have like, one of these areas kind of like being like a host city for the weekend. But like I think that they would more rather just go after the key markets in that situation, one way or another. So that's just like a different avenue that they could go about doing it. If they're not going to focus on a specific game, then it could just have, maybe the entire week or maybe the weekend. But like, it all comes down to logistics and how much the travel costs are going to be. But like, it's not going to be a situation where you're going to be sending a production team out on the road every week at this point, just because, that's going to be like a completely separate crew that you had to send out basically every week and get set up and get situated to make sure everything runs smoothly. So it's going to be a way for them to kind of test the markets see like what the wear and tear is going to be, not only on the players, but kind of like the behind the scenes crew that
Yeah.
maybe aren't getting any like
If I'm
spotlight
being
on them.
honest for that, I think that would be the least of the problems because I know for a fact that Overwatch League, most of the guys there on the esports teams are contractors. So I definitely think that you don't need to worry about the production side of things. They can totally hire locally. So I don't think you're going to see any drops in production or anything like that. But definitely, it's more so reliant on the community's reaction and how the players react to it. I'm very confident to say that you don't need to worry at all on the production side.
That is good to hear. So we're getting not quite to the end of the offseason, but we have heard a lot in regards to sign-ins for really all of the teams. So in your mind, when it comes to these, original 12 teams in the Overwatch League, which team out there do you felt had the biggest sign-in, just kind of like across the board, whether it was one player in particular or just overall moves that the teams did make to maybe have the biggest turnaround after going 0-40, for example, because we saw Shanghai basically try to build this new roster, kind of a Ron Contu Panthera, who were the runner-ups in regards to Contenders Korea this past season against another team that just so happened to get fully poached for the Overwatch League as well.
So I think for that, with season 2, because I suppose now there's not enough players in circulation to like everyone's been involved with the league once. You're still getting people off from contenders. You're still getting people off from the ladder. And I don't think everyone can predict, everyone can say this is how it should go, but you never really know until people start playing in the Overwatch League, because you had Dallas Fuel last season. They were maybe not going to be the best team, but then no one ever thought they'd go that low. No one ever thought they'd get to that point. But that's what happened. And the same happened with Seoul. They were like, they should be number 1 at least. They're now middle of the pack team. And I think probably in regards to that, the biggest move is probably Gladiators letting go of Fissure. Because that was instrumental for Gladiators to become a real like threat in the Overwatch League, as opposed to just a middle of the tier team. With Fissure on their roster, they went from like a mediocre team to something that every team had to fear, especially London, if I'm honest with you, which got me a few times. And I think that's gonna definitely probably put Gladiators down the rankings a bit and Seoul way back up on the rankings. And then of course you have like the famous picks like DeFran. Don't know how I feel about that. I with just following his pass, I'm wondering if we're gonna see, with the debate he did where he said, "Oh, psych, I'm gonna keep playing in the league." How is that gonna be? Is that gonna happen? Like what happened the first time with him? Are we gonna see him somehow midway through the season kind of self-destruct again, or is this just now so much a part of who he is that hopefully that at least for his fans that he really adapts and he becomes the player they want him to be? That's kind of on the celebrity side. And I'd have to say, more so just for every other team, picking up Runaway. I think in everyone's mind with the underdog story, that's the perfect pick. That's who you want to be in the Overwatch League. That's what the fans want. That's who any sane organization say this is the team. But for me, I don't know. I don't have all my cards on the table. I don't know how Runaway is going to do once they get up on stage and once they're up against the best of the best from all over the world. The thing is that like Runaway was just, they were constantly playing Koreas, and you can say Korea is the best scene, but in Overwatch, I think that gap between Koreans and like North America and the rest of the world is so much smaller than any other esport. And I think that even if you pluck the best team seemingly, which is Runaway, or maybe in your opinion it isn't, from Korea, that doesn't instantly translate to success, even though we had an all-Korean roster win the Overwatch League up against a basically like non-Korean roster, which goes to show that the gap, as so famously said in Worlds, the gap is closed. And I think in Overwatch, that's more true than any other esport. And until the games are played and until every card's on the table, you can predict all you want, but I think especially what we saw from the guys from ESPN and the Overwatch League, I don't think that's going to be true. Do I think London's going to be number 1? Oh, you bet. But I don't know how everything else is going to play out. And I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. And I don't want to say like, keep showing off that I think London's the best team, of course, being a Londoner. But I don't think we should everyone should put all their chips on like Runaway or just like Defran or some just like Shanghai complete comeback story, because there's always so much going on behind the scenes, and on this stage, the best stage, it can just change in an instant. Any meta, any stage, something can happen, and a team is going to be number one day, and then they could be mid-tier next, or it could go from the best team to the worst. And I think that is a real possibility with how volatile people claim meta is in Overwatch.
Yeah, and it's what's really interesting about the Runaway pickup. Well, I'll be honest. Like, I'm completely biased. Like, I follow the Korea scene more so than literally every other scene. But like I already feel like I've been through this path with Lunatic Kai with the Dynasty, and to an extent same with London, who had not only Kondu Panthera but GC Busan, since they kind of merged rosters, and that didn't quite work out for London until they kind of let go, kind of like trimmed around the fat, went to a more concise roster, and then the rest was kind of history. But it's like, yeah, I'm in a situation where after Dynasty kind of really dropped the ball throughout the season, not qualifying for any playoff, whether it was a stage playoff or end of season playoffs, it makes me temper my expectations. Now, for Runaway, one of the key things is, regardless of what meta they're entering in, this is a team that has done fairly well, kind of like across the board with different metas. And they also are very familiar with a lot of the talent that is already in the Overwatch League. So I want to see how that plays out. But at the start of Season 1, the teams that stood out at the very start were the teams that came in and had like that family element to them. You had teams that were together for a long time, and that's how like New York got off to like such a hot start in Season 1, and then eventually it caught up to them. Maybe getting a little too confident with where they were positioned, or they felt like they didn't have to conform to the meta shifts, whatever. Like, you could spin it however you want. But like, I would not be surprised if Runaway comes in and gets off to a hot start in like similar fashion to what we were seeing. But it's definitely one of those things that's kind of like high risk, high reward, and you don't know where the chips are going to fall at the end of the day until we actually see them play. So I'm excited about that, and I'm also excited about seeing some of these players that maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with, that were kind of like picked up from the ladder or picked up from like open division, because during Watchpoint, like they kind of went through like some of like the roster sheets, which some of this was misinformation for one. There were definitely some things that were not correct. Like, there were some players just completely missing, or they were talking about players that were signed from specific teams when that team was actually run on the card. NA production, lol. But you have London sign in Krillin basically straight off the ladder. We know Seoul ended up signing Fitz, who is from one of the open division Korea teams, Going Water S. And, you kind of have these unknowns that could really be like a pocket strat for some of these teams. And it's going to be another thing to watch, because, like, for London, like, a lot of people are kind of like looking at Krillin and they're like, is this going to be like the next Jonak and Waden? Like, who knows? But like, you have like another Zenyatta player on that team. You have Bedosian, who can literally like take this kid underneath his wings and really kind of like show him the ropes and kind of incorporate him into the Spitfire family, and kind of help him with certain aspects that he might be falling behind on. And it's going to be really curious to see, like, are one of these new sign-ins that no one knows of, like, what's their potential going to be in the Overwatch League? Because a lot of people really didn't know Jonak, and then, Jonak basically kind of defined what it was to be a Zenyatta player in the Overwatch League, to the point where people are like, he's not even a healer. Like, he's not support. He's just, like, a third DPS every time he's on the field. So that's definitely going to be, like, a pretty big storyline. But I want to get your thoughts, because, you are originally from London. Like, what do you think of, like, sign-in really like a relative unknown? Because really, like, you talk to everyone and everyone's just like, who's Krillin? Like, no one knows.
Personally, I think no one likes when the team makes a decision that the community itself was never behind in the first place. Now, I'm not going to say like, oh, Krillin's going to be in the London Spitfire, or I don't I don't want to see Crown play. I wish they never signed him. I think for teams that sign relatively unknowns, they've obviously spotted something in them. The community and everyone watching Overwatch probably thinks, okay, this person's got someone to prove. If the teams can sign him just out of the blue, then evidently they're good enough to be here. Now, how true that can be every time, who knows? But I'd feel a lot more safer. And I'm sure a lot of teams do when they pull from contenders or they pull from like academy teams and all that, because that's their talent. Those are the guys that they've been working with. Those are the guys that they already know can compete. Those are the guys who have shown that they can play on that level. And when you pull relative unknowns, at the end of the day, you are taking a chance, no matter what. Even no matter how good they are or anything like that, it is still a chance because they've never played on the pedestal you're putting them now. And I think in the case of like signing Kerwin and all that, I think it will go well. I don't have many doubts that it's going to explode in their face. I don't think it's going to end up being like the thing that kills the Spitfire, like I said beforehand. But with what's to come in the future and how like teams are we'll probably see more signings and more trading during the season. I think that going for the unknown factor definitely is something that I don't think you'll be seeing more of. I think at this point, if you're going to get unknowns, you do it at the start of the season when it's a lot less volatile to take your chance on something. And I think that past this point, you're not going to see any more pickups that are out of the blue.
Yeah, because at that point, really, there's going to be a lot more that's going to be on the line, a lot more at stake, especially when you get closer to, the playoff situation. Well, with that being said, Austin, thank you so much again for talking a little bit, not only about, being Valiant, but also, kind of talking a little bit about the landscape of the overall offseason. So if our listeners want to get a hold of you or, read more of the articles that you're writing for Overwatch Score, where can they actually do that?
So just the simplest way I could say is just go to overwatchscore.com, get on there. You go through our staff, you find me, you read what I've got. Sorry to tell you, nothing's coming soon in that regard. but I can say I'm working on another project away from the writing field in the documentary field that's getting a lot of traction. It's getting money behind it, and there's no name to it yet, but it is will have relation to Overwatch and it'll have relation to esports overall. And what the team of people I'm with right now, they want to work towards working towards showing what esports is to an audience that doesn't know what it is. They want to explore esports, they want to show it off, and they want to say that this is going to be the future of sports to people who probably want to know what it is. And I think it's gonna with what we have right now, I think the production, it's gonna be a real joy to watch when it eventually comes to fruition. So keep your eyes on that. I do have a part in it, as in I'm working on with the staff, I'm working on who's gonna be in it and what we're gonna be seeing from it. I can promise you that it's gonna be nothing short of just a great watch. And that's really what's coming out next from me. When the season starts, I'm going to be there day one. I'm going to have interviews out. But for right now, you can read over what I have. And in the future, expect interviews and articles focusing on players and how they feel about how they're playing and just examining them to the fullest.
That's awesome. And I look forward to that documentary because they're like, I would say like across the board when it comes to like the general public, there's a lot of misconceptions or misinterpretation about what esports actually is. So any sort of like the fine lines or anything that could help kind of like bridge the gap between traditional sports fans and even like esports fans is going to be absolutely huge for the scene. Because if there wasn't something to see in esports, like there wouldn't be so much investment from traditional sports franchises. All right, Austin. Well, thank you so much again, and I look forward to maybe one day bumping into you in the Overwatch arena. Not like a D-Pay gladiator shoulder bump, but just seeing you there.
I look forward to it, man. And I almost forgot to say, if you want to keep up on that, Hanlin_Austin on Twitter. If you want to follow that. I don't know how I forgot that. All right, but thank you so much, man. It was a joy to be here.
Thank Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Overwatch Recall with Glen, Totemlydrunk, Smiddy. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit OWLNshow.com and on Twitter @OWRecall. We'll catch you next time.